What's up, guys? Lucky Locks here. Welcome back to another prediction video. This is going to be for PFL Challenger Series 1. And this is a really cool series that PFL is putting on. Very similar format to the Dana White's Contender Series events that get put on for the UFC. So this should be really fun. I'm looking forward to breaking down all of these events on this channel. And this is the first one to kick off the year. Gonna have a look at some familiar faces, some new guys, and we should get some pretty good scraps coming up. So without further ado, let's get right into the first fight. First up, we have an up-and-coming prospect in Simeon Powell coming up against Karl Williams. Light heavyweight, obviously light heavyweight, because all of these fights are at light heavyweight. So yeah, Simeon Powell, 6-1 amateur, 4-0 pro, 100% finish rate as a pro. Somewhat weak level of competition thus far. 3 1-0 guys and 1 0-14 guy. But I mean, he is getting all of them out of there early like he's supposed to do. This guy's still very young at 23, and he's really big, 6'4", 81-inch reach at light heavyweight. That's very long. He's been drawing some John Jones comparisons due to his frame. You know, a little bit early, but definitely a nice name to be compared to for sure. Simeon Powell is pretty good at range. He uses the low kicks well. He pumps his jab out, good straight shots. Like I mentioned, really nice and long at light heavyweight, 81 inches in reach. That flying knee KO he had was picture perfect, walk-off flying knee. He does the right things in the clinch. He digs his underhooks. He's defended takedowns pretty well from what I saw on tape. Definitely going to need to do that in this fight, I believe. We've seen him work some wrestling, some quick transitions when he gets the fight down. He is offensively minded in that way. He has good back takes, demonstrated that a number of times. And I think this fight is going to be his toughest wrestling test to date. He is a great athlete, though. He's strong. He's fast. There's a lot to like about this guy, Simeon Powell. Karl Williams, on the other hand, is representing the U.S. Virgin Islands, training at American Top Team Georgia, Team Lima, almost 10 years older than Powell here at 32 years old, facing the 23-year-old. He had a 5-1 amateur career. All of those fights came on NFC, a local promotion headquartered in Atlanta. All of his amateur wins came by decision, and the one loss was via armbar. He is now 3-1 as a pro with 2 finishes, 1 ground and pound KO, and 1 due to a knee injury that occurred after he took his opponent down, and that was against Deshaun Boatwright, who at one point was a 3-0 fighter on Dana White's Contender Series. That fight was against Alonzo Menafield, who finished him in 8 seconds, but still. After that, he went on to fight Christian Torres on LFA, who we're actually going to talk about again later, and he was finished in the first round there. But, you know, still was a guy at one point that was well thought of. In Williams' last fight, he fought against Jason Butcher for the B2 Fighting Series 205-pound belt, and Butcher was a little bit older at that point in his career, but he is a former Bellator and PFL fighter. You know, the guy's choked out Jack Hermanson, knocked out Andreas Michailidis, 2 UFC fighters right there. He knocked out Jesse Murray, who we saw in Dana White's Contender Series. You know, he fought Sorty and Max Grishin on PFL. He was defeated in both of those, but still, you know, that's good experience. You know, this guy isn't a bum, so I really don't think it's the end of the world to be submitted by him. Williams' 1 pro loss did come in that fight, and it was via submission or round 1 triangle. Williams has faced a clearly better competition, in my opinion, compared to Powell, getting some rounds in with Douglas Lima, training leading up to this fight, so experience is definitely on his side here. He is pretty decent striking. I know he has some Muay Thai. Couldn't find a whole lot of extended striking film on Williams, but he does, you know, he's been saying that he's been working on his boxing a lot. He was actually originally going to do a bare knuckle boxing event in Russia, but got the call from PFL, elected to go this route. And he was a wrestler in high school. He wrestled with Cody Durden, current UFC fighter, and that's how he got in with Team Lima at American Top Team Georgia. He has good grappling pressure. He's strong in the clinch, good body lock takedowns, tries for trips as well. The wrestling looks pretty solid. 2 losses in his career, 1 amateur and 1 pro. Both came by submission, though, so that makes me a little bit uneasy. He will have to try to stay safe if he does get the fight into these positions. He was able to take Jason Butcher down right away and actually had some success in the scrambles there as well. Wasn't able to get any offense going in the guard, though, and did get caught in a triangle. But he was looking good up until the tap. He has been able to get some wrestling going in pretty much every fight I've seen from him thus far. He also was pretty big at 6'3", and I don't think Powell has had to deal with many opponents that are kind of a similar size to him before. So I'm still going to go with Powell here. I think this guy has the potential to be something special. This is definitely his toughest match to date, so he has to go prove it in the cage, but I think that he's up to the challenge. I just can't justify a bet here at minus 280-ish. This is going to be one that, I'm just going to be sitting back and watching this one. It should be a good scrap, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Powell looks like here. If he comes out and has a really good performance, definitely going to be a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing on the PFL, in the PFL tournament this year. Next fight on the card is an all-Brazilian matchup between Joao Fagundes and Bruce Souto. Fagundes is a 7-0 prospect light heavyweight champ, and Souto hasn't gone the distance often. He has 5 knockouts. Seems like a bit of a wild striker, but definitely has some power there. Very aggressive, goes for the kill, dynamic, spinning back elbows, flying knees. Elbows in close are vicious, but it is worth noting that elbows are not allowed in PFL, and I'm just assuming they're not allowed in Challenger Series either. The reason they're not allowed in PFL is because they do have kind of that regular season and playoff format, and they don't want guys getting cut up and that to be causing issues down the line and having fights end earlier, having guys not be able to fight in the cage due to cuts or anything like that. So that's why they're not allowed. So I'm just assuming they're not going to be allowed in the Challenger Series either. So that renders useless a pretty big weapon for Fagundes because he does have very vicious elbows. I feel like he is a little bit available down the middle, but he does move his head and he tries to roll with the shots. I feel like a really sharp technical striker could give this guy a lot of problems, but at the same time, entering into the fire with this guy could get you burned, so it's hard to be really confident there. We have seen him get rocked and dropped before while being a little bit irresponsible defensively, but we've never seen him finished, and to that point, we've also never seen him lose. So most times he does find the knockout. Haven't gotten to see a ton of grappling, seen him taken down, seen him be able to get mount after being on his back, but that was against a 40-year-old opponent with a 26-19 record. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think Souto will have a lot better top game than that guy. Fagundes has a decent sprawl. I think he's going to need that in this fight. He has a good top game of his own too. He has really heavy ground and pound on top. Doesn't waste any time when he gets there, man. He wants to do damage. Souto has been fighting 2 weight classes below at welterweight. Granted, he looks good at 205, but Fagundes is taller at 6'1" and has been a 205er for much longer, so we have to take that into account in my opinion. Bruce Souto, 14-3, so he has more than double the experience as a pro. Hasn't lost since 2015. He is currently riding 8 straight wins coming in here. So really nice looking resume. He's fought on some good shows, M1, ACB, LFA. Fought the much better competition between these two fighters, in my opinion. He was the 170-pound champ at Jungle Fight, and he returned to the cage after a 2-year layoff, up 2 weight classes on LFA 105 last year, and got a good win. He's sticking with what worked at 205. That was against Christian Torres, who I mentioned earlier we were going to bring up later. And, Christian Torres is not the best fighter, but he is pretty solid. He trains at Sanford MMA, always fights solid opponents, and is usually competitive, just not better than a lot of these guys. So it was a good win. He did look good in that fight. Souto has hard leg kicks. He really digs them in. He has heavy hands, not wild KO power. He has 3 knockouts in his 14 wins. He goes to decision a lot, but the power is still enough to make opponents uncomfortable in the pocket or second guess a movement here or there. It says he has a 70-inch reach on Tapology. He was listed at 74 inches on LFA for his last fight, so I don't think that number on Tapology is accurate. But he comes forward, he wants to back you up at the end of his punches, get you moving backwards towards the cage. He has a good clinch game, has shown good trip takedowns as well, strong ground and pound, good jiu-jitsu game, advances, looking for submissions, had a nice back take in his last fight on LFA, got a lot of back control in the first round, and was threatening with the rear naked choke. Came very close to winning that fight in the early frame, really dominated once he got the back. He didn't give it up for the rest of the round. Got it again early in round 2, and then once again got it in round 3. And then later in the round as well, he was able to get it back in the 3rd round. And he has good cardio. He's been the distance many times. His size may play a factor here, but Souto is a good athlete. He looked good in his 205-pound debut on LFA. I feel that Souto is the more polished fighter. I think a lot of Fagundes' win equity here is going to be through an early knockout, and Souto has never been knocked out in 17 fights. So I think Souto has to be careful in the pocket, but if he can avoid that early finish, I see him starting to take over later on in this fight. So I'm going with Bruce Souto in this one to get the win. Next up, we have an interesting matchup between Alexander Poppeck and Taylor Johnson. Poppeck is a 12-3 striker out of Germany, currently on a 3-fight win streak. He was finished by Jamal Hill on Contender Series in 2019, so that was one of his losses. I don't think that's bad at all, to be honest. I feel like Jamal Hill would KO Taylor Johnson too, probably. Poppeck has also lost to Duško Todorovic and Rob Wilkinson, two guys who went on to fight in the UFC. Wilkinson, you might know, is the guy who Adesanya debuted against. He was cut from the UFC, but he's continued to do well outside of it. He's 13-2 at the moment. Poppeck has 7 KOs. Not much of a grappler. He's lost via rear naked choke to both Wilkinson and Todorovic, and he was mounted by Jamal Hill and finished with elbows. So we have seen him struggle a little bit with the grappling before, but he's a good striker. He is a Muay Thai base. Very slight reach advantage of, I believe, 1 inch in this matchup. He likes to kick with his back leg, both low and high. Goes to that low kick pretty often in the pocket. He has a decent right cross. Doesn't always set this stuff up that well. He can leave himself a little bit vulnerable. Lunging with that right hand, was pretty open for the counters against Jamal Hill. But against guys who are really proficient standing, like a guy like Jamal Hill with that kind of boxing, that does make it tricky. I don't personally think that Taylor Johnson is going to be able to challenge him or to push him too much in this aspect, but he needs to make sure he isn't overextending on these strikes and allowing Johnson to get in on a deep shot. He's not the best grappler because, whenever he gets into trouble, that's normally why. The biggest concern is going to be Johnson, catching him with his legs together. I'm not sure how much resistance he can really offer in those aspects. I think he essentially is probably going to lose any round that he gets taken down early in, but he has shown some pretty good takedown defense on tape. Tries to dig the underhook, push the head down. He does the right thing. So as long as he is diligent with that and isn't getting taken down, early in the round, I feel like that's going to be a positive for him. And I think the guy with the wrestling pedigree of Taylor Johnson is going to be tough, though. I mean, Poppeck will have the size advantage here, however, being 4 inches taller and the natural 205-pounder. He'll be the bigger man. Taylor Johnson has been at 185 before this, so he is coming up here. And Johnson is a really familiar face if you're an LFA or Bellator fan. We've seen him a couple of times on both shows. Had a stellar LFA career, actually 4-0 with 4 round 1 knockouts. Came on Dana White's Contender Series after that and was submitted by Andre Muniz. So really no shame there. Both of these guys have been on Dana White's Contender Series and were defeated. They're both trying their hand here to get into PFL on a very similar format in Challenger Series. But yeah, Taylor Johnson heel hooked Ed Ruth in his next fight after that Contender Series bout. That's an impressive win. He then lost to Johnny Eblen, who I think is a very solid guy. I don't think there's really any shame there. 2 wrestlers. Eblen just happened to be the better wrestler. After that, he rear naked choked Lance Wright in the first round and then lost a split decision to Fabio Aguiar. I believe he is training out of Sanford MMA now. It did say American Top Team Portland on Tapology. I'm pretty sure he's down at Sanford now. He's not really the best striker. I don't think he can win a stand-up fight in this match. I think he knows that, though. I really don't see him trying to stand with Poppeck too much. Tries to enter with the double jab a lot, throws the high kick every now and again. Defensively can be a little bit loose at times in the stand-up, but he's a very good wrestler. Should look to wrestle here. I believe he will look to wrestle here. I mean, I don't think that's any secret. He's very physically strong, but the thing is, he has been known to gas a little bit, and I picked against him last time when he was a big favorite around like minus 250 for this reason, and he was correct. I should have put a bet there. I didn't. I wasn't ballsy enough, but I feel like maybe some of that gets remedied a little bit by the fact that he's no longer cutting to 185, but he also could lose some of that brute strength advantage, especially against a big guy like Poppeck. And this is a tricky fight to predict, in my opinion. At surface level, we have a striker versus a grappler here, and normally you would favor the grappler in this scenario, but factoring in the size advantage that's going to be afforded to Poppeck here and the gas tank concerns around Johnson, I think I got to lean to the dog in Poppeck. It seems like more money is coming in on Johnson, but man, you're just not going to catch me laying minus 200 or worse on that guy. Johnson will probably have some early success, but I just can't trust him at the chalk. Am I lining up to back Poppeck? Do I think he's like a super value underdog? I mean, I don't know. I think if this line gets really crazy, maybe I'll take a small stab. But this fight isn't looking super appetizing to me at the current number. I think I'm going to lean to the dog and Alex Poppeck here. But, Johnson, if he is able to get that wrestling going, if the gas tank does hold up, it's going to get hairy. But, judging from his previous fights, I just don't know if I can trust him. And if he does start to gas out, I feel like Poppeck is really going to start having his way on his feet if Johnson isn't able to get it down. So tricky fight, tough one to call. I'm going to lean towards the dog here. Moving on to the fourth and final fight of the card, the main event, we have a bout between Josh Silveira and Mohammed Juma. Silveira 7-0 LFA double champ at middleweight and light heavyweight. In my opinion, this guy was the LFA fighter of the year last year, and this is the fourth or fifth time I've talked about him on this channel. He has been featured in many a breakdown video, and I've picked him every single time so far. My favorite memory of his thus far is cashing his plus 475 KO prop against T. Cummins for the 185 belt in LFA, the 205 pound belt, the light heavyweight belt in LFA. And Silveira has an 86% finish rate, showed us that he can go 5 rounds in his last fight against a tough veteran in Jared Revell, and that one was to win the middleweight belt and become the double champ in LFA. And, Silveira's strengths lie more in the grappling realm, but he is solid on the feet as well. He's a measured striker, good kicks, that nasty head kick KO I talked about to win the light heavyweight belt in LFA. He has excellent wrestling, excellent jiu-jitsu, wrestled at ASU, son of American Top Team head coach as well. Good takedowns, good back takes, loves the rear naked choke, and he's very good at that. In his last fight against a really solid guy in Jared Revell, who was a jiu-jitsu black belt, he had tons of success in the grappling and wrestling. Cardio, always a bit of a question mark, but like I mentioned, he got that 5-round experience under his belt last fight, so I feel like we can kind of confidently say that this guy can go 5 rounds now, and this one's only going to be 3 at the most. So Mohammed Juma, on the other hand, is an 8-2 prospect from South Sudan. Last 2 fights have come on UAE Warriors. First round finish and then a fish hooking disqualification. He has a 100% finish rate though, 8 knockouts. This will be the toughest guy he's ever fought, and maybe vice versa for Josh Silveira. Juma is known to kind of play on the edge, as we say in hockey, if there's any hockey fans tuning in. He was DQ'd in his last fight for fish hooking and had a point deducted in the fight before that. I believe it was for a headbutt, and a fun fact, the ref in that fight was actually Frank Trigg, so that was interesting when I was going back watching the tape. Juma has fought at heavyweight in the past, and Silveira is kind of in between a middleweight and a light heavyweight, so that's something to take into consideration. Maybe a slight size advantage for Juma in this one. He's going to have a lot of reach. He's going to have about 7 inches in reach here. But, with that said, Silveira did fight at a similar reach disadvantage in his last fight. I want to say it was like 6 inches maybe. But yeah, Juma's very aggressive on the feet. He will swing wild at times. Very strong. Seen him work the wrestling before. He's really heavy on top with serious ground and pound. Just don't think he's on quite the same level as Josh in this department. The physicality maybe could potentially be an equalizer there, but I think that Silveira's a lot more technical. I think he's going to want to be either all the way in or all the way out here. I don't think he should get into a firefight with Juma. I think Josh has the technical skills to win this one, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit confused about the price. I mean, this isn't really a spot that I expected to see Silveira at minus 550. I mean, I expected him to be the favorite for sure, but the line does seem slightly wide. I like him to win. He's a prospect that I'm really excited about. One of my favorite LFA fighters. I'm very happy to see him getting a chance to kind of move up to the next level. I can't really justify laying that kind of number in this spot personally, but I do really like Josh Silveira to win. And, like I said, he's a guy I'm really excited about. So that's going to do it for my PFL Challenger Series 1 predictions, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Take care and good luck with your bets.